Good evening and welcome to the Clergy Cafe. It's Wednesday and we are live, and here's the new titles. For those of you who've been sat there for a while, I do apologise because that song's gone on and on and on. But it's good to have you with us tonight. Welcome to yet again another episode of the Clergy Cafe. As we say, we're developing this as we go along. We're looking to different people, to different places. And tonight is certainly one of those. So thank you for those of you who have joined us. Tonight, we're welcoming somebody from outside of our diocese. But I'm going to introduce him first. So tonight is Canon Philip Gillespie. He was born in Clogmoor area of Liverpool and has served for many years of the diocese of the Archdiocese of Liverpool. He was educated in St Matthew's Primary School in Liverpool and then went on to De La Salle Grammar School in 1976. You can work out the details from there. In 1982, at the age of 18, Father Philip went to the English College in Rome, where he spent 8 years on the journey to priesthood. Father Philip was ordained by Archbishop Warlock on the 22nd of July in 1989 in the Church of St Matthew's in Liverpool, the very parish where he went to primary school and in the parish that he grew up in. In 1990, Father Philip was granted something that sounds really, it sounds important, but I'm really not sure what it is, licentiate in sacred liturgy. I'm not even sure if I said that right. Now, we're going to add that to the list and we'll ask that question in a little bit. From 1990 to 2002, Father Philip served in 3 different parishes for the Archdiocese of Liverpool before heading back to seminary. But this time, he was acting president and then vice president of St Cuthbert's Seminary at Ushaw College in Durham. Father Philip went on to serve in the seminary for a further 8 years. In 2011, he spent a short time back in the Archdiocese, serving in the Isle of Man. Yes, did you know that? The Isle of Man is part of the Archdiocese of Liverpool, but we'll pick up on that one later on as well. In 2015, Father Philip was then thrown back into seminary life when he became the Rector of the Pontifical College of St Bede in Rome, where he still serves to this very day. It's a great privilege to have Father Philip with us tonight. We've seen him as a team working in St Michael's and All Angels in Woodchurch, where he often serves, gives Father Chris a bit of a break whilst he's on his holiday. So it's with great delight and with technology willing, I welcome Father Philip to the Clergy Cafe tonight. Good evening, Father Philip. How are you?
Good evening, Sandy. I'm very well, thank you. And good evening to everyone who's listening.
It's great to have you with us and to finally venture outside of our own diocese.
Great, yes. Very good.
We'll not hold the fact that you belong to the Archdiocese of Liverpool against you too much.
That's very kind. Very kind.
But obviously, tell us a bit about your vocation story here. A bit about life maybe before you decided to enter into the priesthood.
Well, as you said, I was born and brought up in Liverpool. Lived all my 18 years before going into seminary in the parish of St Matthew. And really, it was in the parish that the idea of vocation crystallized. We all have a vocation. We're all called to serve in some particular way. From the very fact that we're baptized, we're called to do something. Some of us are called to do the ministry of marriage and caring for a family as it grows up. Some are called to the ministry of consecrated life, religious life, and some as ordained ministers, be they deacons or priests or our bishops as well, called to live out their own faith in such a way that they're able to inspire and nurture and nourish others. And when I look back at growing up in Liverpool, it was very much, yes, my family, my mum and dad, but also the parish priest, Father Horan, who was the parish priest at St Matthew. Lovely, gentle man, but ever so attentive to the needs of other people. And I think looking back on it, that's what impressed. And that's what I expect naively, I thought I'd love to be like that. And that's still a journey, trying to be like that. It's something which doesn't come with the laying on of hands at ordination. It comes with day in, day out practice, and also the inspiration of other people who give that sort of goodness. So family and parish. My dad was a member of an organisation, some people may have already heard of this, called Serra. It's named after a Franciscan missionary in America, Junipero Serra, who founded places like Los Angeles and San Diego, San Francisco, as mission stations. But Serra was set up in America, first of all, and then came over to Europe, and the first ever Serra group was actually in Liverpool. It is a group of men and women who pray and work to foster vocations, especially vocations to diaconate and priesthood. And actually the work that they did impressed me. And I thought, well, there are people here who have that desire to nurture and to assist others, then there's evidently a need. And I expect you see a need and you think, well, can I in some way, help to fulfill that? You'll never do it solely on your own. You never do it with your own efforts. But you can put what you can at the service of a much bigger mission and ministry. So that led me at the age of 17, I still hadn't done A-levels by then, to apply to Archbishop Warlock, as it was then, to see if I could discern whether I was being called to a particular ordained ministry in the life of the church. What I didn't know was Archbishop Warlock and my dad knew each other because of the work of Serra. Right. So when I went to have the final interview with the Archbishop, my dad drove me to Archbishop's house, and I went in not knowing, firstly, whether I'd be accepted to train or where I'd be sent. I presumed I'd go to St Cuthbert Seminary at Ushaw, because that was the seminary for the north of England. But then when I saw the Archbishop, he said, yes, we'd be very, very happy if you'd go and discern your vocation at the English College in Rome, which was a bit of a shock to me. My first thought was, well, I don't know any Italian. And he said, well, don't worry. He said, you'll pick it up. Said goodbye to him, came down to the car, opened the car door, and there on the seat next to my dad was a Teach Yourself Italian book, because he was in on it. He knew what had been decided. So that then began another stage of the journey.
And I mean, you were only 17 at that time, 17 going on 18. I mean, did you feel ready to go to seminary at that age?
I don't think I felt ready to go to seminary. I felt ready to give it a go and to try and discern and find out exactly what I was being called to. Seminary was a bit of a closed book. I'd never experienced it before. I deliberately hadn't said to people, what's this place like or another place? So you're never prepared for seminary, but I think you're open to it. Yeah. That was certainly the way I went into it.
And what was your experience like at seminary at that age? I mean, it's often been said sometimes seminary is something that you tolerate, or you get by with. But what was your experience like as that?
I now say to students, you have either the opportunity to endure it or to enjoy it. And I can very clearly say I enjoyed it. Going at the age of 18, you're ready to soak up all sorts of different experiences. You're open to what is going to be placed in front of you. The teaching was difficult because that was all done in Italian. So you had to pick the language up fairly fairly quickly. But I must admit, I came across some marvelous people, learned from their experiences. Hopefully they learned a little bit from my experiences as well. And there are lads now who are serving in different dioceses around the country and indeed in other parts of the world who I was a student with. Right. And we keep in contact. We've gone our separate ways in the sense that different things have been asked of us over the years, and we've tried to respond to them as generously as we can. But we can look back and we can see those things that we shared together, and that certainly at the age of 18, it was wide-eyed, and this was a marvelous adventure. And so I'm very grateful for that experience.
Yeah, and I mean, so if my mathematics are correct, you've basically spent nearly 22 years across your priestly life in one seminary or another. Firstly, your own seminary was 8 years. Then you were in Durham for 8 years. And now the last 6 you've been in Rome again. I mean, did you ever expect to spend quite this much time in your priestly life in the seminary?
Not at all, not at all. I knew that it was a certain number of years, but in Rome training, but I never counted the years. I must admit, it was never a case of, well, I've only got 3 more years to go or 2 more years to go. I tried to just remain as open as possible to that. It just so happened that whereas a lot of my contemporaries were there for 7 years, the reason I was there for 8 years is that I was doing the licentiate, which you mentioned before.
And I got it wrong.
The teaching degree, which was an extra year.
Right.
So that's why it ended up as 8. But going back to St Cuthbert's, Durham, which is where I expected I'd be trained anyway, but wasn't. God has that strange sense of humour that he brings you back eventually to where you think you were going in the first place. That was completely out of the blue. I'd been, I think, 6 years as parish priest in Christ the King in Liverpool at that point. And I always say I made the mistake of picking the phone up. And lo and behold, that's what it was. I then made the mistake a second time after I'd been parish priest on the Isle of Man of picking up the telephone. Never expected it, never sought it in that sense, never sort of requested it. But I must admit I found it incredibly enlightening, stretching in the good sense of the word. You end up doing and being in positions you never expect to have to take that form of leadership. But no, delighted to have spent that time. But when somebody puts it quite so bluntly as that, you look back and you think, yes, it is a long time.
A long time in the seminary.
So I should know what I'm doing by now.
You mentioned that somebody obviously gave you that phone call. Who is it that phones you and says, we want you to go here? Because obviously, that's not necessarily the Archbishop, is it?
Well, on both occasions, it was the Archbishop.
Right.
Naturally, that there are all sorts of discussions behind the scenes, and they're trying to find out who is best for a particular role at a particular time. When I first went to Durham, it was as a teacher of liturgy, because that was what my teaching degree was. So in that sense, I should have expected that at some point I'd be called to use that, not only in the diocese, because I was on the liturgy team in the diocese and for Liverpool, and indeed for the country as well, briefly. But then going to the Beda was completely out of the blue. I'd been 4 years as parish priest on the Isle of Man at that point, and just got to the stage of people knowing me. I knew was getting to know the people well. So it was a bit of a wrench to move, but you've got to do that at times. That's what obedience sometimes means. You take the good that you've learned from other people in the different parishes and experiences, and you apply it wherever you're called to serve.
I mean, you say you spent 4 years on the Isle of Man. I mean, that must be an incredible experience. It's such a small area. I also didn't realise it was part of the Archdiocese of Liverpool at all. But I mean, was there more clergy serving with you there?
There were 4 other priests on the island. And I share your amazement that the Isle of Man was part of the Archdiocese of Liverpool. When the Archbishop said, I'd like you to go to Douglas, which is the capital, I must have looked quizzical I didn't have a map with me and I wasn't sure where Douglas was. No, the island was a spectacular place to be, not only because of the people, the people are most important, but also because of the beauty of the island itself. I thoroughly enjoyed my time 4 years over there. It's a strange experience living. I know we all live on an island, but this island just is a little bit bigger. But the Isle of Man is very sort of closed on itself in a very positive way. It's got a lovely sense of community about it. And one of the areas that I was very interested in and involved with on the island was the political life, because right opposite the church in Douglas is the government offices, and also their version of the House of Commons, the tin-walled. And I used to go over there every now and again and just sit in their visitors' gallery and listen to the debates, which was an excellent way of getting to know how the island was run, what was important, what was concerning to people.
I mean, having gone from, obviously you were in seminary before that, but to go from working in the Archdiocese of Liverpool to the Isle of Man must be quite an incredible, almost like culture difference as well.
Yes, it was. I've been very fortunate that both in the time when I was in Durham teaching, the weekends I always used to try and get back to the Archdiocese to supply in the parishes, which was great because it not only kept me in touch with what was going on in parish life, but it also meant that I could say to some of the other priests, leave it with me for the weekend. You can have a little time off, because the breakaway does the priest good, also does the people good sometimes, just to see a different face, and to then they could say when their parish priest got back, they say, "Oh, we're glad you're back, Father. The visitor preached too long." So part of my ministry was to make other priests look good.
Right, I see. That's something to add to your CV then as well,
Absolutely.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
So currently, obviously, you are now the rector of the Pontifical College of St Bede. Now, I know some of the listeners might never have heard of a rector. So tell us, what is your role as the rector of this seminary?
As the rector, really you're the one who has the overview of all the different aspects of the life of the seminary. When bishops or religious superiors send their students to the seminary, they really want not only the academic side of things, but also that sense of community, that sense of a spirituality, a growth in the love of the Lord and also of his people. There are different priests and religious on the teaching staff who will look after certain areas. I think the rector is there to try and coordinate all of that, to make sure that what's being given is a wholesome, a rounded way of formation, knowing full well that in your time in seminary, when you come out as an ordained deacon or ordained priest at the end of X number of years, or during that period you decide and discern it's just not for you, and that's not the calling you've received. What you really want is someone who has that generosity and that desire to be a good Well, the phrase that's sometimes used is an ardent but gentle servant of the gospel. I think it's a lovely phrase, that. Ardent, you've got to have a zeal for it, a real desire and a joy in it. But you also have that gentleness. I think that's where it's lovely to be able to look back on your own journey and see how people have been very gentle and positive and encouraging with you. And certainly in my experience, I look back and I see that and I say, well, I hope I can be the same for others.
So I suppose, to put it a little bit crudely, if you like, when it comes to the enjoyment and endurance, it's your responsibility to really try and make those young, or not so young, some people, enjoy the seminary life.
Yes, enjoy and be encouraged by it. Life is not always going to be enjoyment in the sense of a grin on the face and everything is going fine. There are occasions where it's hard going, and you just have to say, well, this is part of my formation. That's true in any way of life. But to be able to look back and say the seminary years made me a gentle and an ardent servant of the gospel. I would be happy if, in 5 or 10 years, I bump into someone who was a student when I was rector, and they said, that's what we picked up. The best way of doing that is to model it yourself. To live it yourself. You can't teach that in the classroom necessarily.
And it's that presence, that being as well, isn't it? Just who you are.
Yeah.
It's so important. Now, I probably should have started with this question, but the Pontifical College of St Bede is a seminary. That's as far as we know. Tell us a bit about the Pontifical College of St Bede.
It was the college as a place for training was founded in the middle of the 1800s, 1852. And it was founded specifically for those who were coming at a slightly later age. Often they would be coming having been a minister in, say, one of the other ecclesial communities or traditions, be it Church of England, Methodist, Baptist even. And therefore they were coming with a certain experience. And that's why even today we say that we are a seminary for those who are coming at a later age. So most of our students will be in their late 30s, early 40s, but we have students who are in their late 50s and early 60s. It's a slightly different way of encouraging that older, people might say more mature vocation. Because for a lot of people, vocation is as it was in my day. You went in as a seminary at 18. But increasingly, that doesn't happen these days. It's not that it can't happen, but increasingly it doesn't. So I think the Beda still has a particular niche it can respond to encourage people who are coming with experience behind them of different jobs, different backgrounds. When Pope John the 23rd came to open the building we are presently in, is in just opposite the Basilica of St Paul, on the outskirts of Rome. He said that with God years do not count, which I think is a lovely phrase. He's really encouraging whatever age you are able to hear and respond to the call, seize it and take the opportunity.
And if I'm right, you've got both those who are studying to the diocesan priesthood, but also those who are in religious life as well.
Yes, the majority of our students will be those studying for diocesan priesthood, but for English-speaking countries. So we have, I think this year we'll be receiving people from Australia, from Nigeria, also from Mauritius, as well as England, Ireland, Scotland and Wales. sometimes, as we have at the moment, we have some Franciscans with us who are from Sweden, but their particular house has English
Right.
as its second language. So therefore, they're happy to study in English, because unlike the other colleges in Rome, the English college you made mention of before, the college I went to, our students do all their studies in the college
Right.
in English, rather than going out to any of the other universities. Yeah.
And so you've got really quite an international community there then.
We have, and it's great to learn from other cultures, and hopefully they learn from our culture as well, and they'll take it back. They'll make friends across the different countries of the world. During the exam period, during the lockdown that we lived through, we were using exactly this medium, Zoom, in order not only to do lectures, but also then to do examinations. And one of the priests who was acting as the host for an exam session said he never thought he would end up saying to a priest in Ireland that there was someone from Australia who was to be examined. So he came out with the line, "Dublin, I have Melbourne waiting for me." And that's the reality of who we are. But to be so international is a great blessing.
Yeah.
It has its moments, as we're trying just to work out how different cultures react and work in different situations. But no, very enriching. Very enriching.
And how many students do you actually have in the college at the moment? Obviously, you're currently on your holidays, if you like.
Yes.
But normally, how many students would you have?
Well, at the end of the last academic year, in June, we had 32 students. When we start again in September, we'll have 36 students. Okay. We had 4 students left us this year, one from Ireland, one from England. They've gone on to discern their vocation in other ways. But then we had a priest ordained for the Brentwood diocese, and also a priest ordained for the Diocese of Meath in Ireland. So we were very fortunate during the lockdown that half of our student body stayed in college. The others went back to their individual dioceses.
Right.
But 15 of them said they wanted to stay where they were. So we kept college life functioning as normal as possible. There were naturally the restrictions that we had to follow, as we've all been following. And we ended the year by the ordination of 6 of the students as deacons. And that took place in the college chapel, which was lovely. And they were from England, Ireland, and Australia.
Wow.
Yeah.
It really is quite an international, albeit a small number, from all over the world as well. But now, obviously, everybody that's in the college would be in different years, if I'm right. How is that split up? It's a bit like school years, really.
It is. The Beda course or program is 4 years. And when students come to us in the first year, they are prepared really to take on the ministry of the word. So they receive the ministry of reader during that time. And you might say, well, a lot of them will have served as readers in their parish communities anyway. But the first year is very much focused on study of the scriptures and study of the word. So it's very logical that they will take on that ministry. In their second year, the emphasis, if you like, shifts a little to the idea of somebody being conformed to Christ as an ordained minister. And they will take that idea of, especially the Eucharist, so they'll be instituted to the ministry of acolyte, assisting at the altar, but also distributing the sacrament. In the third year, they receive what is called candidacy. And candidacy is that they've been discerning for a certain period of time in the seminary. And also the seminary has been discerning alongside them and seeing, whether this individual character is indeed, as best we can understand, called to this ministry.
Mm-hmm.
And candidacy is when the church says, yes, we think this is the correct path for you. And also the candidate themselves says that. Mm-hmm. And there's a lovely line that's used in the liturgy: may God, who has begun the good work in you, bring it to fulfillment. So it's very much that idea of a journey, which now is becoming something which is quite definite and has a vision to what will take place at the end of the third year, please God, which will be ordination as deacon. Then in their fourth year, they return to the college to have the opportunity not only to act as and serve as deacon in the college, which is very important because it gives good example to those lower down the house, but also very specifically to prepare for parish pastoral ministry. So a lot of the courses will be about parish practicalities and the differences in dioceses and countries of how the church is working and living alongside and as part of the cultures. And then at the end of their fourth year, they leave the college, and increasingly what's happening is when they go back to individual dioceses, they may do 4 or 6 months serving as a deacon in the diocese. It gives them the opportunity to make links again with the diocese. And then they'll be ordained presbyter and will serve in parishes. So
does that mean you get loads of invites to ordinations across the world?
You do.
So there's perks every now and again.
Oh, absolutely. But the nicest thing is yes, seeing different parts of the world. But the nicest thing is being able to stand up and be asked by the bishop, do you think this man is well, the word that's used is worthy. Now, in that sense, none of us are worthy at all. But what we're saying is this man generous? Does he have a good spirit? Is he that ardent and gentle servant? And sometimes you'll say yes, but you're saying yes, and it's a continuing journey. It's not just a snapshot.
Yeah.
Here's someone with a generous spirit about them.
And I think also what's important, what I'm hearing from you as well, is that the seminary journey as well is a discernment journey. It's not necessarily that the minute you enter the seminary, your discernment's done, you're going that way. That this actually is a journey that you walk with these students too.
Yes, yeah. And that's a great privilege to be able to do that, especially when with some of our students, you hear their story of what's brought them to the seminary, and you see how individuals have influenced them. But many of them have come with great gifts that have been, they've been running their own firms, or they've been working for banking organizations or whatever. But they're sitting at the same table and having a good conversation with someone who is from a different country, a very different background. But what unites them is that desire to serve. And that's very inspiring.
Yeah. And I think it's that journey also together.
Yeah.
It's those men coming together. So what does an average week look like for, if there's ever such a thing, and I know at the minute there really is not such a thing, but what does the average week look like for the rector of the seminary?
Well, certainly, yes, as you say, the last three or 4 months have been anything but average. As rector, you have the responsibility, as I said, of coordinating the different aspects of the formation process, but you're also looking after the practicalities. You're looking after the building. You're looking after the care of not only the students but also the other people who come in and assist us in that journey. So we have some teachers who come in from the other Roman colleges, and from the universities. We also have a marvellous number of Italians who will be in the college to help look after the catering and look after the physical building that we're in. So it's very much a coordinating thing. But I do some teaching as well.
Right.
So depending on the timetable that I'm given, some of the days we'll be teaching and preparing for teaching. But also I think it's very important to give as much time as possible just to be available to students, either on a planned basis in the sense of saying, this week I'd like to see everyone who's in a particular year group, or just to be around the college so someone can say, Father, can I have a word? So that's within the college. Because we're part of an English-speaking community in Rome, you also end up being called to do things outside. That might be to help with English liturgies in one of the other churches or one of the basilicas in Rome. It might be to get together with the ambassador, because there are two English ambassadors in Rome. One is to the state of Rome, of Italy, and the other is an ambassador to the Holy See.
Right.
There's a specific ambassador for the Vatican. And either one or the other or both sometimes gather all the English speakers of the city together, or representatives of the institutions. And so that might well take place as well.
Yeah.
And I take whatever opportunity I can just to get out and see the beauty of Rome as well.
Yeah, it's one of the luxuries, isn't it? Being in Rome, you're in Rome as well.
Oh, absolutely. It's a marvellous place to be. Having been there as a student for those 8 years, I actually knew the city quite well. But it's lovely to make the acquaintance again of places that I saw many years ago.
And your Italian must be improving from that first day your father gave you that book.
Absolutely, I've still got the book. Yeah, but no, because all the lectures when I was a student myself were in Italian. You had to pick it up fairly quickly. But I say to the students now that one of the best ways of picking up the language is, as well as reading the newspapers and listening to the television in Italian, allow yourself to be engaged in conversation by the personale, those who work in the college. There was a marvellous lady called Imelda who was when we were students, and she worked on the floor where we had our rooms. And to start off with, she would sort of greet you, very simply, just draw you out a bit, and then bit by bit the questions would get longer. And if it looked as if you were trying to avoid her, she'd make sure that the mop and bucket were just in the wrong place, so you had to stop long enough for her to. And looking back on it, she was a very, very wise and kind guide in just getting used to the language.
Yeah. And I suppose this might be a really obvious question, but why is it the seminaries in Rome? Obviously, Rome is Rome, that you can't argue with that. But why do we have an English-speaking seminary in Rome? Why not have it somewhere over here?
Well, we do have seminaries over here. Why in Rome? I think most, if not all, of the nations will try and have some presence in Rome because, as you say, it is Rome. It's the city where there is so much universality that actually what people are experiencing, they will then take back to their individual dioceses and religious orders. And it will just enable us, hopefully, to have a broad vision. That's not to say those that train elsewhere won't have that broad vision, but the opportunity to be in Rome really does give you a view of the church in its universal sense. And also stops you thinking that just because that's the way we do it, that's the way it's got to be done.
Yeah.
Which in itself is a great lesson.
And so, how long do you have like a set tenure or a set length of time that you will be the rector there, or will that be just something that just seems to trundle on and on and on and on?
Well, when I was on the staff at Ushaw, I was appointed for 6 years, which then became 7, and then became 8. For the Beda, I was appointed firstly for 3 years.
Right, so you've gone over that already.
I've gone over that. This is entering my 6th year, and I suspect I'll just say, well, if you want me to stay, I'll stay. I'm very happy to, but equally always happy to return into diocesan life back here in England.
Yeah.
But my predecessor, who was a priest of your own diocese, Monsignor Rod Strange, he was rector for 17 years. Ooh. So I've got a little bit to go yet.
So you're sitting tight for now anyway.
I'm still a baby rector.
Well, maybe we'll interview you again in 17 years' time and see how some of the answers might have changed and adapted over the years. I mean, it must be incredible being in Rome just because it's Rome. Do you get a chance to see much of the city?
I do. I take whatever opportunity is possible. We have one day a week where there are no lectures and there's no timetable. That's a Thursday, and Thursday is known as the Gita day. It's the day off, and you'll either go and see parts of Rome, or it's perfectly doable to get on a train and go to places nearby. Just to embrace the culture. I mean, there are most marvellous places in Rome. I mean, naturally, people think of St. Peter's and St. Paul's, and today is the feast of one of the other basilicas, Mary Major. But some of the smaller churches and some of the smaller piazzas, the gathering places, just to sit there, with a coffee in front of you, and just see people going about their daily lives, because the Italians are great ones for being out, especially of an afternoon, evening, as a family group. Yeah. And the family group isn't just mother and father and children, but it's grandparents as well, and across the generations. That's really lovely to see. But there are certain specific places in Rome that you'll sort of enjoy, and you'll enjoy showing to other people as well. Because again, one of the great joys, not only for me, but also for many of the students, is when family and friends come out to visit. You can share the city and the beauty of the city with them. That's been one of the things we've missed over the last couple of months. Not having visitors. We felt that hospitality is a very important thing for us. And it's a very good lesson to learn for those who are going to go into parish and diocesan ministry as well. That sense of making other people feel welcome and valued and giving of your best to them. It's lovely to be able to do that. But there are certain places in Rome you're certain everyone has their favourite little corner of Rome.
And where would be your favourite?
There's a very lovely area just outside the Pantheon. The Pantheon is more or less in the centre of ancient Rome. And that's lovely. It's a very bustling area, but the Pantheon itself is a very interesting building. It was restored to as it is now by the Emperor Hadrian of Hadrian's Wall fame. But when you go into it, it's a circular building, and there's a what looks like a hole in the roof. But it's known as the oculus, the eye, and it was done deliberately like that. One of the things I remember from when I was a student, I haven't been able to do it again yet, is on Pentecost Sunday, the local fire brigade put ladders up to the top, and at the end of the Mass, a bit like the service of remembrance from the Albert Hall when they pour down poppies. On Pentecost Sunday, they pour down rose petals to be a sign of the coming down of the gifts of the Spirit. But that's the Pantheon and the square outside the Pantheon. One area I always like to share with people.
And obviously Rome is a big part of your free time as well then. But what else do you enjoy doing when you've got a bit of free time? I would imagine there's not a lot of free time. But when you've got a bit of time to relax, to breathe, what do you enjoy doing?
Getting out and about different parts of Italy, as you say. It's lovely to be able to see different parts of the world as well when you're invited to students' ordinations. In-house, I would not too loudly is play classical music. You've got to make sure it's not too loud, because of course when you've got 30 odd people in a building, it's not just your building. You've got to be sensitive to them. Also, I like watching the Italian news and the Italian political programs. I think from the Isle of Man, I carry that idea of, if you want to know what makes a country tick and what you're going to be asked to bring the gospel into, listen to something of what their political debate is. Yeah.
And I suppose you've already mentioned about, like, one day you see yourself possibly coming back to work in the Archdiocese. Is there an element of ministry into parish life that you miss?
Miss. The one time that I sort of think very fondly back to parish life is after the Easter Vigil. It's lovely being in college, and we celebrated with all the dignity that we can. But the thing that always sticks in my mind, and we certainly in the parishes I've been in, we did it both after the Easter Vigil and also after midnight mass at Christmas, was just to spend time with people and have a social gathering. And oddly enough, that's the one time I'll as I'm taking the vestments off after mass, I'll think, I know what they'll be doing now back in the parish. And I find myself almost thinking myself back into that circumstance.
And there's a certain parish priest not too far away from here either that I believe pops corks of champagne at the end of his Easter Vigil. So it's definitely a good moment there.
He didn't learn that from anyone who taught him at seminary. Yeah.
Over the years, obviously, you've now done so many different places, different types of ministry as well. Where have you felt most at home?
You've got to be very careful. The place where I felt very at home, I won't say most at home, but very, was the Isle of Man. And I don't know why that is, because there are some families from Liverpool who always went to the Isle of Man for holidays. We never did. The Isle of Man was a completely closed book to me. But somehow just being on there, receiving the warmth of the people, and also that the Isle of Man was a place where I very much valued the ecumenical relations with the other parishes. Church of England, Methodist. I was once invited to go and preach at the Elim Pentecostal Church as well, which I think raised a few eyebrows, both in the Elim Pentecostal Church and also possibly in my own parish. But there was a very, very lively sense of ecumenism there, it may be something to do with being on an island, and in that sense, feeling not cut off, but a little remote from what they refer to from the island as the adjacent isle, England and Ireland. But that was very, very supportive and very helpful. Made up, of course, for the fact that because you were reliant on planes and boats to come back to Liverpool itself, you couldn't just get in the car and drive down the road to see someone. So you forged and created very, very good and supportive friendships and collaboration, not only with the other ministers on the island, but also with the people as well.
So just before I start finishing up and wrapping up some of the questions, I've got to ask a question. Living in Rome, have you ever been walking down the street and the Pope has driven past?
Yes.
It's one of my dreams. I hope one day to walk in. When did that happen for you?
He didn't wind the window down and wave.
He didn't recognise you then?
No. I think I was walking between the for those who know Rome, between the Basilica of John Lateran, which is the cathedral church of Rome, and Mary Major's. There's a long street called the Via Merulana, and it was on there. Quite unexpectedly, the police stopped all the traffic, so you knew someone was making their way, and all of a sudden, down the way comes the little blue Fiat, because as we all know, he's not one for these large black limousines. It's much easier getting in and out of the blue Fiat. You could tell it was him because of the outriders.
It's not often you get a little Fiat with outriders.
No. That's right. Even in Italy.
So, we tend to finish off, before I ask you to give your message to our young people, we tend to finish off with the sort of similar questions. So I'm going to just rapidly fire through these because I've also just realised the time. I tend to do that at the end of the interview.
Oh, right.
So, if you're sat in front of the TV, what are you going to be watching?
Holby City.
Oh, that's a new one. We've not had that one just yet.
Now, the reasoning behind that is that in all the parishes where I've been a priest, I've been a hospital chaplain.
Right.
And somewhere along the line, it's sunk in. So anything to do with hospitals, I seem to enter upon.
Secondly, as rector, what kind of car do you drive?
In Rome, I don't drive.
Oh.
Yeah. There's a perfectly good bus system and metro and things like that. Back here, a Toyota.
I've often heard that driving in Rome is an experience anyway.
Oh, absolutely. it renews the sense of Ben-Hur and the chariot race. Yeah.
Now, with this next question, I probably should have mentioned this at the start. You're currently on holiday, aren't you?
Yeah.
Enjoying the wonderful sunshine and the rain and all that goes with it. This might count as your holiday, but in answer to the question, maybe it was something different. Where did you last go on holiday?
My last holiday was in Scotland.
Oh, that's always a good place to go. Anywhere nice.
It's an excellent place to be.
And finally, I'm guessing I've guessed the answer to this one. Have you ever met the Pope?
Yes. Every year he comes to the Basilica of St. Paul for the 25th of January, which is the Feast of the Conversion of St. Paul. And he presides at an evening prayer. And I've, for the 5 years I've been there thus far, I've been very fortunate that because we're so close to there, the abbot of the monastery has always invited me to come up and sit in the choir stalls with the community. So I've met him on those occasions. And also sometimes there are courses or seminars that are run in Rome, and at the end of it, the chances are that there'll be a papal audience,
right,
and you'll go up and meet the Pope for a brief instant, just to shake hands and exchange a few words, but always very gracious.
Yeah, still quite an incredible moment as well, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Regardless of how many times you do it.
Absolutely.
So, Father Philip, each week we ask our guests to share with our young people your message. So, can I ask you, what would be your message to the young people of the Diocese of Shrewsbury?
It actually struck me when listening to the Gospel on Sunday, that line from Matthew's account of the feeding of the 5,000, give them something to eat yourself. I think that idea of being able to nourish other people by who you are, and yes, by what you say, but most of all by what you do, to realize that the great trust, but also the great blessing that the Lord gives us, that he actually says to us, give them something to eat yourself. You may feel that you haven't got enough. Certainly the apostles thought that what they had was rather negligible. But with him, he can transform the little that we give generously to be something that nourishes people in so many different ways. Linked with that, a text that we often use in college is St. Paul to Timothy, where he says, fan into a flame the gifts that were given to you. Now, we use it specifically thinking of those who are being ordained and sent on ministry to different parts of the world. But I think actually it's perfectly true for each and every one of us, that the gifts that have been given to us, we need to do something with. We can't just let them lie dormant. We've got not only to understand them, but understand how best and how wisely we can use those gifts, not just for ourselves, but also for others. And the last thing I'd say would, naturally, you'd expect this from a seminary rector, is listen to what the Lord is calling you to. If he's calling you to religious life, consecrated life, or to ordain ministry, be generous in responding to that. If somebody said to me at the age of 18, when I went into seminary, in 30 something years time, you'll be doing what you're doing now, I would have said, never in a month of Sundays. Just be generous, be ardent and gentle in proclaiming and living the gospel. And wherever we find ourselves and whatever we do, will be a blessing to others.
Thank you very much for that, Father Philip, and thank you for joining us tonight. I will bring you back towards the end just to say a proper thank you, but for sharing everything that you've done tonight, it really has been incredible, so thank you for sharing that with us.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So that was Father Philip sharing some of his experiences of seminary life as the rector of the seminary. Quite an incredible experience, and we're very lucky to have him with us tonight. But as always, I have totally lost track of all time because I was enjoying that quite so much. So I'm going to bring back in Father Christopher. Good evening, sir. How are you?
Good evening. Very well, thank you, Sandy.
I do apologise because yet again I'm doing it again. I've run over time. So I'm going to just hand back over to yourself to lead us in our thought for the evening.
Thanks, Sandy. I'm also very aware this evening that Father Philip taught me liturgy at seminary, so I just need to make sure I get everything right tonight. So perhaps as we begin our time of prayer, let's make the sign of the cross. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. And let's listen to an extract from St. Matthew's Gospel, remembering that when we listen to the Gospels, it is always Jesus himself speaking to us. Seeing the crowds, Jesus went up the hill. There he sat down and was joined by his disciples. Then he began to speak. This is what he taught them. How happy are the poor in spirit. Theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Happy the gentle. They shall have the earth for their heritage. Happy those who mourn. They shall be comforted. Happy those who hunger and thirst for what is right. They shall be satisfied. Happy the merciful. They shall have mercy shown them. Happy the pure in heart. They shall see God. Happy the peacemakers. They shall be called sons of God. Happy those who are persecuted in the cause of right. Theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Happy are you when people abuse you and persecute you and speak all kinds of calumny against you on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward will be great in heaven. Those words of Jesus we've just listened to come from his great Sermon on the Mount and are known as the Beatitudes. These are some of the most well-known phrases in the Bible, and I think there are two things for us to ponder on this evening. The first is the word happy. It's perhaps not the greatest of translations. It seems strange to think about mourners being happy. So it might be better to say blessed. Blessed are they who hunger and thirst for what is right, meaning that they are close to God, and he will give them the strength, the graces that they need. The other thing I invite you to reflect on this evening in those Beatitudes are the sort of mission statement for us as followers of Jesus, perhaps a guide to how we should live our daily lives, a manifesto for the Christian life. But perhaps they are more than just an ideal, but are a statement of fact. Perhaps the kingdom of God is a place where all those things happen and are happening right now. From our baptism, we're each called and chosen to be builders in the kingdom of God, and how we live our lives, how we treat others, how we respond to the needs of those around us, how we respect ourselves, how we speak up for the dignity of others. These are all bricks in that great kingdom of God, and you're called to play your part in it. As St. John Henry Newman said, God has given you a work that he's not committed to anyone else. This evening, let us ask the Lord for those graces, those strengths we need to be kingdom builders, and open our hearts to receive those graces. And let's pray together in the words Jesus taught us. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Let's ask the Lord for his blessing. The Lord be with you. And may Almighty God bless you, the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Go in peace, glorifying the Lord by your life. Thanks be to God.
Now, I'm just going to warn both the gentlemen that you are both now on screen, so no gestures, please. Thank you, Father Chris, for that. Nothing like a bit of pressure to keep you on your toes. You are muted as well, by the way. So thank you very much for that little reflection there. And to Father Philip, thank you for joining us. I know you're both great friends, even though he did teach you to liturgy. So just make sure you keep him right nowadays, yeah?
I'll do my best.
But thank you both for joining us tonight. Father Philip, I hope you enjoy your holidays.
Thank you.
Enjoy the sunny climate that we currently have. I think you'll be looking forward to getting back to Rome. And thank you for all that you shared with us tonight. It was really great to hear. So thank you very much.
Thank
Chris,
you.
we will see you the same time next week. Thank you for everything this evening. So that again brings us back to the end of yet another incredible evening. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for watching. Don't forget, we're starting to up the live streams. We have now started Monday morning live. It will go live every Monday morning except for next week at 11 o'clock. Next week it will be at 11 o'clock on Tuesday morning. So don't forget that. Please join us for that. The reason that is I'm going on holiday this weekend. A little bit of a breakaway. Monday off. So Monday morning live will be Tuesday. And of course, Clergy Cafe will be back next Wednesday. Next Wednesday, we're going from the opposite end. We've had the Rector this week. We've got some of our seminarians joining us next week. They're currently back in the country before they go back to seminary in September. So please do join us for that. We're really looking forward to that. Don't forget, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We're on all of the social media platforms and they are still operating just as normal with a bit more information going out in the coming weeks as well. And don't forget, if you haven't already done so, click that button that says subscribe so that you know when we come back on next time on the live stream. Thank you for joining us this week and we look forward to seeing you next week. Enjoy the new jingle.